Hey, everybody. Tim Kawakami here, north and south, with my co-host, the Los Angeles Times' own Dylan Hernandez, live from his car. So if you're getting the video version of it, you get a really, it looks like a large car. Dylan looks like he's like being driven around. I'm not sure. We won't talk about where he is, but because people might try to find him.
You don't want to
Dylan,
talk about MLS Cups?
well, I think we did enough pre-show that just is the extent of my ability to talk and my patience with MLS Cup. But no, if any further MLS, we will do like a whole separate show, like clearly a special on the MLS Cup. Messi's in there, right?
No, they got knocked out early. His teammates complained about the playoff format.
Okay. Well, then I'm out. No Messi, no me, which might include the majority of the American sports populace. But we shall see. I'm not trying to put down the MLS. I know the Earthquakes are due to win anytime now. Dylan, Los Angeles Lakers, all of a sudden, horrendous. Like they're putting up memes about how bad their defense is. They got blown out last night. JJ Redick saying how embarrassing it was. It wasn't a professional performance. LeBron James saying, yes, I agree with that. You look at the videos of it, the defense was astoundingly bad. Now, we know this is not a great team, but they had been playing well before this. I think it's 5 straight losses now. I know another team that has a bunch of losses in a row, which we will get to, but not quite the way the Lakers are doing it. The Lakers are doing this with style. They're doing this to just raise eyebrows. Where do you think is this kind of a pivot point for the kind of the Redick regime, or are we seeing the kind of the decline of LeBron? Where are we here?
Yeah, I think the decline of LeBron has a lot to do with it. I think they've lost 6 of 8 right now, and you're seeing a lot of sub 20-point games, right? I mean, the 2 games that they did win in that stretch, I think he went for 31, right? I think he went for 31 in one of them, and then 27 in the other. They need him to be playing at a very, very high level every night, and he hasn't been doing that, right? He's had a lot of games where he's kind of scoring in the teens, not shooting well. Look, that happens to people, but it can't happen to this team. They're just not good enough, and the other big guy, Anthony Davis, has kind of been up and down with him as well. The last couple of games, they haven't had Austin Reaves. Now, early in the season, Austin Reaves was playing well. He was shooting well. And I think that kind of led to victories, right? And these are the same problems, Tim, that you and I have been talking about, right, for a couple of years now, that they need a third guy in there to kind of step up. Reaves has kind of been getting shut down, the last couple of weeks here. Now he's missed the last couple of games with an injury. So, again, it's kind of just not a good team. And what's the disconcerting part is, like you said, kind of on the defense, right, that they look like they're giving up right now. They had a stretch like this last year under Darvin Ham, and now you gotta, right, last year it was all Darvin's fault, now I think you kind of have to start looking, well, maybe it's the players, right?
Yeah, maybe
it's the players. It's kind of what I was saying last year, but maybe it's the players.
Yeah, but I'm always amused when I hear, well, if Ryu Hachimura just played better, if he was more consistent, like that's who he is. If your season is kind of predicated on Hachimura, on D'Angelo Russell, on we know the list of players, Gabe Vincent, waiting for Jared Vanderbilt, like that's not a season that's going to go very well. It might have little peaks, but there's going to be valleys where they are now. But the mean of where they're going to be when you average it all out is not going to be very good. And they're under 500, and they feel like an under 500 team. And maybe LeBron might be in a little doldrum. I think he'll play better than this. He's not, he's like bricking threes. Like he is just not even close on his threes. But in these videos, I'm just seeing him like play James Harden defense. He's just like, you cover him. I'm not going to go over there. And then the guy's wide open. I'm not going to go cover that guy. That's destructive, right? That tears your defense apart because you have several guys kind of doing that. And if the leader's doing it, then why would the other guys play hard? This is what you have when you have a 39-year-old superstar. Like everything's dependent on a 39-year-old and on a rookie head coach, frankly. I think Redick probably has a long future ahead of him in basketball, whether it's a coach or executive or whatever. But it's a lot to put on a first-year guy, right, who kind of gives a good press conference, but like, can he get, kind of will this team forward? I don't know. I mean, I don't think they're going to fire him or anything like that, but This stuff is not. It wears on you. It would wear on a good veteran coach. I don't know what it's going to do to a rookie coach like JJ Redd, who's in the spotlight. Everybody's looking at him going, okay, now JJ, what do you do? What do you think his kind of demeanor is right now?
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously right, and I think no different for us when we were starting our careers, right? Every game, every, story that we were writing represents kind of a disproportionate amount of like your entire body of work. And yeah, I do think he's kind of right. Every game right now, there's, it does feel like kind of like life and death for him, right? And we're kind of seeing him, very kind of explicitly call out his players, right? Call out specific guys, benching Russell. These things have been happening, and I just kind of wonder, like, how long can you keep this up, right? How long can you keep this up? From your own standpoint, how long can you keep this up from the players just kind of at some point just kind of blocking you out? Right early in the season, I do think, there was kind of a pivot point in there where, right, he did call out the team for not playing with effort, and they came back the next day, and you're kind of like, hey, like maybe this guy kind of has it. It's just that's not a well that you can go to like every 4 or 5 days, right? That message will get old.
Yeah, and fast. It gets old with an old team. It's not like a bunch of youngsters. Oh yeah, let's go line up and let's go run through a wall. If LeBron doesn't want to run through the wall, he ain't going through the wall, and he does not look like he's going through the wall. I also flash like, can you imagine Danny Hurley going through this? Can you imagine? There was not that I think it was ever really serious that he was going to take that job. He wanted to get his contract better at UConn, which is what he did, but. Can you imagine? He freaks out, after winning 2 national championships when they lose by 5. Like, what would he do when he's coaching LeBron James and Anthony Davis through this? So what would he do coaching D'Angelo Russell? I mean, are you kidding me? So, no, I don't think there's an alternative for the Lakers. And I also don't know what they can do to, there's going to be a Zach LaVine stuff. There's going to be other names, but I don't know if there's a fix for them. I really don't. I don't know what they have to trade, Dylan, like their draft picks. But then how many draft picks do you want to trade when you got a 39-year-old central piece who is only going to get worse as the years go on? They might be a little stuck.
Yeah, I really think they are, and again, especially the way this franchise has positioned itself, right? It's kind of championship or you failed, and there's kind of really no in between. And anytime you're a team like this, again, your currency is hope. You need to at least give the fans hope that you can do something, right? And you could say that LeBron is false hope or this or that, but the next time they win 3 games in a row, you're going to sit there and kind of wonder like, hey, this kind of looks okay, right? And LeBron, he might be 39, but he's still LeBron, And so in that sense, I felt that they didn't have a choice but to do this. If it meant whatever, you had to draft Bronny, you had to do it. The problem is, like you said, though, is kind of going forward, because it feels like they're just kind of papering over a problem here. And we saw this kind of at the end of the Kobe era too, right? They just kind of, okay, well, we're going to turn this into a big retirement show for Kobe and kind of sell tickets in that way. But it wasn't ever leading to, they never felt like they had like a real plan on how are they going to actually turn this thing around. And again, I and I hate to keep picking on her, but like these things always just kind of start at the top. I just don't see, I think obviously Pelinka will go before Jeannie Buss does, but I just think as an organization, they're just not equipped to kind of deal with this type of situation and rebuild. I do think, look, they made this kind of commitment to LeBron in a way, right? He chose them, and at that point, I think there was kind of this agreement. Okay, you'll take me to the finish line, and right. And at some point, the kid became part of the package. Okay, there's an unspoken agreement here that they're going to have to see through. That says, what do you do when you come out of that? And like you said, there's no fix here, right? I mean, other than they just got to sit here and pray that like Wembayama like falls out of the sky like LeBron did. But, again, now with all the different rules that they have now, that's those types of deals seem like less likely to happen. They're in a really, really tough position here. And they're really lucky that the Clippers have not rebranded, right? Mm-hmm. Because, kind of on the other side of town, they're spending money on a lot of the ancillary stuff. And, but just because it's the Clippers, they can't gain any momentum. That's the only thing I feel that's kind of kept this a Lakers town.
Yeah, and the fact that the baseball team won a World Series and there's other things to talk about that we all know in LA. Yeah, I mean, I spin it towards the Warriors as I always do. And Like, I've got some from my boss, like, kind of mocked me for like writing earlier that they're maximizing Steph Curry's prime. Oh yeah, are they 5 and 1? Yeah, yes, and they could lose 6 in a row without Steph and Draymond playing tonight. We're recording this on Thursday night. Clearly could happen. They clearly could be a 500 team or very close to it very soon. But they got some trade assets. That's what they got. They've still got Steph, who is not 39. He's 36, about to turn 37, but he's playing very well. He is suffering some knee tendonitis. That is certainly something to circle. It's what happens when you're older. He has to take some rest days. He's taken 2 now in the last, I think, 4 games. Clearly not a step towards the right direction, but they've got Kuminga, who they can either like try to unleash or they can trade him. I think it's more likely they trade him. They've got, Brandon Pajemski, an interesting player, probably going to keep him. Could try to trade him. I know there's teams that have been interested in him, at least in the past. He hasn't been real great this season, and Kurt lit into him last game for some mistakes. But you don't light into anybody, right, unless you think he's good, right? A bad player, you just kind of ignore and just don't play. They got some things. They got their draft picks. I think this is headed towards them making a trade, but not right now. But this is how you do it when you're not that great. They're still 12-8. They're not under 500 at this moment. They could win one of these next few games. They could stay above. And they have it in them, winning in Boston, winning Oklahoma City earlier this season. This is the end of their run too. They're on a slower curve than the Lakers because LeBron is so old. And AD, could get hurt anytime. Obviously, Draymond and Steph could get hurt anytime, but they're just slightly above them. They're slightly not going to, they're not quite headed down the swiftest path towards irrelevance. They're kind of holding on, and we'll see how long Curry can keep them there. I think they're going to make a trade. I mean, I'm going to do a trade column like pretty soon, although we just got such a long time before the deadline. They just happen to have reached it before many other teams. Like, they're going to have to look at this. And they've got this Kuminga thing, right? He's going to become a restricted free agent. So usually what happens is you do not stay on your team. Once you become a restricted free agent, it's tough to kind of figure that out. Trade him in February, try to build up his value now, and then get something very useful. I'm not 100% sure what they can get, what else they'll have to package, but I just think they're in that mode, and it's a good way to look at where they are. It's just that at least they're in that mode, and the Lakers can't really get there because they don't have a Kuminga, right? They don't have a set of young players. They've had them, and they have not. They've traded them away mostly, or they've had other issues with them. Now they've drafted, like, Reaves was a great pickup. Before that, Caruso, who they'd let go. They've had some finds. Like, they do pretty good in that 20 to undrafted category, but those are not guys who lead you into the future, right? They're not the guys who, okay, this is now who we are. I don't know that the Warriors for sure have that, but in Kuminga, you have a shot at it, or you have a shot at turning him into Lauri Markkanen, let's say, next, in the offseason. Or whoever. I've joked they could try to make that Paul George trade again, although I don't know if I'd want that one at the moment, given that he hasn't played. They played like half the games in the Sixers, and he's only getting older. But as always, Warriors and Lakers kind of like joined at the hip and through some of this because they're the ones who got these aging superstars, and they're the ones that kind of managed this kind of decline of the era.
Yeah, it is the thing, right? It's exactly what you said it's about having kind of assets to trade, right? And you look at the Warriors, right? You get the feel that, like, hey, they knew this day was coming, and they kind of prepared themselves for it. And, again, they lined themselves up in a way that they wouldn't be completely boxed in. You go back to the Lakers with that Anthony Davis trade and how clumsily they tried to put that together, right? I mean, it didn't happen immediately, remember? They try to get him at the deadline. Yeah. Davis tries to force his way out. They say no, and they had to revisit it and basically pay a higher bounty, And so all of a sudden, right, instead of just giving up like 3 guys, they had to give up everything, and those are the kind of like things, again, right? With the Warriors, you kind of feel like, okay, this group has put together a winner before. We trust them to kind of put it together. The Lakers, you never really got the sense that, like, hey, they were really smart in terms of like managing their assets. Like you kind of mentioned the Caruso thing, right? They just like let the guy go. Yeah. It's about how you kind of not just identifying the assets, but how you manage them. And, again, the one championship, the bubble championship that the Lakers won, I mean, really, it was just because LeBron decided, like, hey, I want to play there, right? And they were able to get Anthony Davis there. And, that was kind of the one year that everything kind of lined up for them, and they were able to win like that. But I don't think you ever looked at that team and were like, man, like, they really did a great job of, like, assembling everything here, right? The Warriors, just kind of what they do, it just feels smart, right? There's certain organizations, the Dodgers, I put the Rams in there, right? Those are organizations that kind of feel smart, and you feel that they're not going to at least like shoot themselves in the foot and get themselves in a position where they're completely boxed in and can't do anything, and there's kind of no hope, which I kind of feel is where the Lakers are right now.
I think the other thing about the Warriors is they think Steph can still attract a top player, like Paul George wanted to come to them. It didn't happen. Someone else might at some point in their career say, you know what, I want to play with Steph for his last really good 2 years. And I'm not 100% sure that will happen. I think Giannis was a possibility when the Bucks were playing terribly. Now that they're coming back, doubt that's going to happen. But there are players that are really good that might say, you know what, let's go play with Steph. Let's do that. Again, who is it? Could the Warriors actually trade for that person? Hard to tell, but they have that. I don't know that LeBron has that anymore.
I don't think so.
He had it with AD, and that was it. And they both, they had the same clutch agency, all that kind of thing. I don't think that's the thing. And I'm not 100% sure Curry does. It's close. It's on the borderline. He certainly has had it in the past. There's certain tall power forward or small forward who came to them not too long ago for part of that reason. We'll see. It is just a different atmosphere, I think. Yeah, it's a different – there's urgency. There's pressure. But you'll kind of want that pressure for the Warriors because you still feel like you're relevant. You got to stay there. You got to make sure you're relevant. I think they're pretty relevant still, and I think the Lakers are falling out of relevancy. It's just the way that happens. It's age. It's nobody's fault except for management kind of setting this up this way and betting the house on Ryu Hachimura and all the others that we know that they've done. Hate to rip him. He's not a bad player, but you cannot be counting on him and various other players that they're absolutely counting on. All right, Dylan, our weekly discussion of the Jim Harbaugh Chargers or any other LA football you want to bring up. What interests you about what's going on in NFL football in LA?
Yeah, well, again, we talked last week, right, about the Chargers, losing, just getting beaten up by a really, really good Baltimore team. Road game in Atlanta, not exactly world beaters, but tough assignment. And they came out and did what we said they were going to do, right? That they weren't going to just roll over and, let the loss from the previous week linger. Maybe not the prettiest football, I think.
There's not.
But football is kind of the one sport you can kind of, right?
Exactly.
A win like that you'll take.
Exactly. There's something. No, there's like that's almost like it's hard to watch. It was hard to watch. Offensively, things were not going well for them. But it's admirable because you can win that way, and then you play better and you win by a lot. Like you kind of fight through wins. It just counts the same as every other win, and you can play better, and they have played better and pile up wins. This week they got the Chiefs. That's a tough one, but they're going to play them tough. Like they're tough. They're a tough team. I think they've proven that, Dylan, and that's unique in the history of the Chargers.
Yeah. And, I think what I've been impressed by is, right, usually, there's regime change, and change happens like on two fronts, right? There's kind of the cultural stuff, and then there's the personnel stuff, and usually those things kind of go kind of hand in hand, right? The personnel gets better. There's more confidence, and that kind of leads to better culture, which then attracts more players. But here, you look at this roster, they probably had, right? You count the guys that they lost, they probably had a more talented team last year, right? Mm-hmm. And despite that, the culture change to me has been really impressive from that standpoint, right? These guys do kind of feel, again, you watch like the last two games, different results, but I think in both cases, you're looking at this team still thinking, they're a year or two away, right? They need to add pieces, right? Justin Herbert needs guys around him. You feel at some point that lack of talent is going to kind of catch up to them. Yet the players have all bought in 100%. And again,
you can build around what they got. You can build around it.
Right.
And it's the same players, and you couldn't really say that. You didn't really know that last year.
Right. Yeah. And because in the past, right, when they brought in like Khalil Mack, right, that was supposed to be kind of like a culture changing type guy. And he did affect, right, the guys around him. There wasn't that guy this year, right, where they brought Joe Alt is probably the big addition that they had. He's a rookie. And so there wasn't kind of this like, hey, this guy comes in is going to kind of change everything from like a player standpoint. And again, the fact that they were able to kind of get as much buy-in that Harbaugh's been able to get the buy-in that he has, to me, has been kind of impressive.
Yep. I've compared him to Kyle Shanahan. Obviously cover them both. There is a kind of physical way they both want to play. They're both offensive-minded coaches who respect the defense. In fact, love the defense, and that's not always the case with offensive-minded coaches. Shanahan obviously is way further down in his 49er tenure than Harbaugh. But Harbaugh did 9 years at Michigan after he left the 49ers. Took him 9 years to win a championship at Michigan. I just see it the same kind of things with Shannon. Now, listen, there's going to be a point where the whole thing tires out if they don't win a Super Bowl. That is going to happen, and you can't keep. I do acknowledge that keep going up against it and not winning. At some point, there's a burnout, and maybe they're experiencing some of it now. Most of this, though, has been physically breaking down. I think it's just the accumulation of all these extra games over the last 3-4 years. It's going to come out at some point. And I think they have every reason to believe they can be better next season. And you keep Kyle Shanahan and you pay Brock Purdy. Those two guys are joined at the hip. If you're down on Purdy, maybe you don't always think great about Shanahan. If you're down on Shanahan, you probably don't invest all this money in Purdy. But I don't think if you're not with one of them, you're out without both. And then you got to get a quarterback and a head coach and probably a general manager you have to go find. And knowing Jed York as I do, I don't think he wants to do that. As painful the process was when after he fired Harbaugh, thought he had it all figured out and clearly had 2 disastrous years before they had to go find Shanahan. They've had other terrible head coaches before they had Harbaugh. You don't give up these guys or else the whole thing gets derailed. A couple years of this, different question, who knows? But I just think you have to understand that this is the base structure for winning. Maybe you don't get there, but they've won a lot. They've won a ton. Everything except for that one play at the end of 2 Super Bowls. Not many coaches get there. And again, I acknowledge that it is tough to live through that. And fans and owners and everyone else does not like having to lose those games. But you'd rather be in those games than not be in those games. That's what I always push back on. It gets to be this NFL fandom and others that if you get to the game and lose, it's worse than it is if you didn't get to the game at all. And I completely disagree. You have to win big games to get there. And the 49ers at a point this season, obviously, it's all but over. I think you assess what you got and you build till 2025. And I think they're doing that. I think they will do that. And I think Shanahan and Brock Purdy are the ones that you do it with. And if you have to recalculate from that after next season, you do. But, you don't want to go into 2025 with this expensive roster. They're not getting out of the expense of this roster and then have to redo the coach, the quarterback, and the general manager. That I think is exactly the wrong way to go.
I got a question for you. I've been kind of surprised at kind of this like anti-Shanahan, right, vitriol among the fan base, given, what's kind of the base of that? I've with LA, I've always thought, the Shaq Kobe Lakers ruined it for everybody else, right? Because now it's like you have to win automatically. Is this based in kind of the Warriors' recent success? Is it the Niners' history? I think people's memories go back that far.
Yeah, partly the Bill Walsh. They didn't lose any Super Bowls. Say that's incredible. It's partly the Bay Area just loves the big moment and then only pays attention to the big moment. And if you lose in the big moment, then you're somehow weak and will never do it. I think it's also the sports fandom now. It's like the last thing I saw is the only thing that could ever happen in the future. And it's stupid. But I also think, there's a group of fans that don't like kind of cocky, assured coaches. They don't like Kerr. They don't like someone who is like out in front. The person that many of them, they don't say it now, did not like Harbaugh because he was so assured of himself. They keep saying, oh, how come Shanahan won't be accountable? How come he won't say he blew it? So, and I keep saying, you don't want coaches who are unsure of themselves. You don't want Brandon Staley doing a, little mini apology tour every single game. You don't want a coach who's trying to weigh what fans think in his decisions. You absolutely do not want that. Now, you want the coach that wins. You want the coach that gets you the Super Bowls. That part I know, but my sense, and I know 49er fans, and many of them are friends of mine, they get tired of assurance. And I think that's a weird way to go, because you don't want the vacillators. You don't want the one who's just trying to please the fans. You start trying to please the fans, you're going to fail every single time. You can't be thinking, okay, wait a minute, it's 4th and 2, but last time I didn't go for it and my fans got mad, so I better go. You don't. That was Brandon Staley to me. It was like always alert. Ryan Day with Ohio State feels like that. I think Kyle Shanahan, although interestingly, he's lost a lot of the big games that people accuse Kyle Shanahan of not being able to win. I just think the assurance, the way he carries himself bothers a lot of fans, and it bothers like national media people too. He doesn't give the private little national media thing. He doesn't, which I really like. Harbaugh didn't either. Again, that's why I connect them together. Like, national media guys hate Harbaugh because he will not give you the little chat with Jay Glazer. He won't do it. And that's okay. I get it. But you have to factor that in, and when you're watching it. And Shanahan does not do that. And maybe I'm biased because he does do it with me occasionally, but it's a local thing. He gets it if you're there every day. And I will say that, I respect that he will share his opinion with me at times. And fans get into this. Why is everybody talking about this guy? Why is he supposed to be a genius? Why is he da-da-da-da? And as I said, like, are you mad that people think he's a genius? Now that makes it worse for you. They do. Like in the NFL, people ask me, like, what's he thought of in the NFL? I think some players think we talk too much about him, but that's not his fault. They think it's too much about Kyle. Not in that locker room. I'll say that. In the rest of the NFL, thinks the world of Kyle Shanahan. Like, absolutely thinks the world of him. Coaches swear by him. We know the train of assistants that have gone on to bigger jobs. We know the scheme is like the number one scheme in the NFL. We know that he's respected as a person. So I just think certain base of fandom gets lost in he's such a big personality. He won't ever admit he was wrong. He hasn't won the big game, so therefore I want anybody else. And I think it's stupid. I think it's self-defeating. I think it was very much a part of the Harbaugh thing, which Jed York was on board with, by the way. So that made it even worse with Harbaugh. But you want those guys. Those are the guys you want. Can you imagine what Jim Harbaugh, if he had been fired at Michigan after 4 years, which is what they thought about doing, or after 5 years? No, those guys get you somewhere. Took them 9 years. Took Andy Reid 16 years. Like, these guys that get you close and don't always get you to the top are much more likely to do it than the guys who never get you close. And I just think that it get certain base of fandom, and it's not small, the 49ers. I know it is not small, but they just are sick of being in the spotlight and then losing. But you know what? I want the coach that gets you the spotlight, because he was one play away from winning the Super Bowl. Not that long ago, Dylan. Not that long ago. And you don't make it worse because he was one play away. You don't want the coach that's 40 plays away. But a certain group of the fandom and media just wants anything new. And like, who the hell's it going to be? I don't know who's going to be. Any guarantee that person is anything close to this? Zero. You go another year, you go 2 years, you go 3 years, different thing. But he just was in the Super Bowl in February. And if they tackle Patrick Mahomes on 4th and 1 in the overtime, they win the Super Bowl. Okay, you want to fire that guy? Okay. But, there is definitely, again, it's I keep watching it. I'm obsessed with this team. I fixated on every play. So that must mean that everything that they do is bad because they haven't won the Super Bowl. And I reject that. And I think it's silly. And I think I connected to Jim Harbaugh. And I don't think Jim Harbaugh should have been fired in 2015 or 2014. And I do not think Kyle Shanahan should be in any jeopardy. I don't think he really is either.
Yeah. Well, speaking of guys that had trouble winning over the Bay Area fan base, now he might have been 40 moves away from a championship. Our buddy Farhan Zaidi. Rumor is that I think the Athletic reported he's talking to the Dodgers, about possibly coming back here.
Sounds pretty natural, right? He was with the Dodgers, and he's tight with Andrew Friedman. But God, that's a thing that's going to piss off Giants fans. But no surprise, right, Dylan? No surprise.
No, and I mean, I guess the only surprise has been that, again, I thought that front office operated the best.
Oh, just as Dylan does this, he cuts out. He goes away. I'll just wrap this up. I think Dylan might be gone. He might have an MLS game he has to go cover. I just think that Farhan Zaidi was an uncomfortable fit for the Giants. I thought it was a really good fit. He had been with the A's. He's a Bay Area, very familiar with the Bay Area. But the fandom is different. And at some point did not accept the fact that he had been with the Dodgers too. And I think that there was just this feeling that he wasn't always 100% a Giant. And this is only going to back that up. I thought he did mostly good things. He did not do some key things, but this is not a surprise that Andrew Friedman and Farhan Zaidi would be reunited with the Dodgers. And maybe that is exactly what was always fated to happen. Dylan, you're back. I just did a nice little monologue there. Yeah, that
I could hear you the whole time. I don't know.
Wow. Okay. You just disappeared. You're still blank on another screen, and you're live on this screen. So we'll just deal with it. Just go. Well, what's your thoughts on Farhan Zaidi to the Dodgers?
Yeah, again, I thought that front office operated the best when both he and Axel Toughness were a part of it, right? They actually had three kind of, right, with Friedman obviously being the other, three kind of big personality type guys with different ideas and different ways of doing things. And, whereas probably since, and Toughness left to the Braves and Farhan went to the Giants, these guys all kind of talk the same, right? The vocabulary is the same. They kind of seem to kind of think the same. I mean, they just won a World Series last year, so I guess I can't really criticize them too much. But yeah, I think it's gonna be a good addition. Again, Farhan, I think back when he was there, I heard about different debates that they would have about free agents, and it'd be like legitimate disagreement there. And obviously, look, Friedman's the boss. Friedman's gonna make the last call. But I do think it's, especially when you have somebody who's confident enough, right? It's not that I'm saying that everybody in the Dodgers front office necessarily thinks the same, but it's another thing to tell your boss, like, hey, like, you're wrong. We need to try this. So, and personally, I like chatting with the guy. So,
Farhan's a good guy. I come up with the two things I want to say on this when I'm not put on the spot by Dylan disappearing from the screen is that one, Farhan might be better off as a strong number two than as a one. I think he's great we talked about it, at the margins. He's great at combing through things that other people look past. He's great at, keep working it, make the 7 moves in order to win 4 of them. And you get yourself incrementally better. But that's not the number one guy. Like, the number one guy's vision. Number one guy is projecting out like the big picture 5 years down the road. I'm not sure that's Farhan. Also, though, if he's the number one, he needs a strong number two. Yeah. And maybe Scott Harris was that, who left after the 2021 season, I forget which one, to go run the Tigers. I don't think Pete Patilla was that as the number 2 last season. You need some pushback. You need to talk it through, like he talks about, but I'm not sure he had it. And Kapler, he kind of thought was that guy for him, but I think they just ended up agreeing over everything. And Kapler was just so eager to please him that didn't work out. Maybe Bob Melvin could have been that. Some of that, I don't know that worked out too well last season. Clearly the standings would tell you that. But like you talked about, like Friedman as a strong one with Farhan as a 2, or Farhan as a strong one with someone else as a 2. That's strong. That beats back some things, that argue over things. I just don't think he had that with the Giants, even though he talked about how much he loved that situation with the Dodgers and the A's a little bit. Like Billy Beane is the clear number 1, but he will, like, things leaves room for others to push back or make their own decisions. That is not the take of Farhan with the Giants. He did not leave room for other people to make decisions. He made them unilaterally. I think it's also he was just not in love with the structure, the way the Giants always do things. Some of that I respect, but man, if you push back on the structure of this team for years and years and years, that has won 3 World Series not too long ago, and you don't win, you are not going to be the president of baseball operations very long. And Buster Posey, who was part of those wins, will become the next guy. And we'll see how I think Buster would do well by having a similar situation with strong people around him. I don't know He plays some people, Zach Manassian, and his brother, Perry Manassian, GM of the Angels. I'm not sure how that all is going to work, but we'll see. I just think it's good. It's good for a back and forth. It's good for, loud opinions because it tests you. It tests your thoughts. Yours have to stand up against other smart people. And I think Freeman and Farhan are very good together. I mean, I think they've proven it.
Yeah.
All right, Dylan, you might disappear again. Who knows? MLS Cup fever. I know you just got to run off to that, but covered a lot of things, Dylan. We'll talk again next week.
We did, and I did restrain myself. We're talking about like coaches and whatever, people not liking certain types. I did restrain myself from mentioning Bruce Arena.
There you go. He's going Bruce Arena. Bruce Arena. San Jose Earthquake Zone. Dylan Hernandez. Not in the MLS Cup though, unfortunately. Too bad. No Messi, no Arena. The big two. The big two are not there. But Dylan Hernandez is there, everybody. Go say hello to him. All right. That's the show for today, everybody.